Hello everyone, welcome to WhiskyWars. Today we have two peated island whiskies from Talisker, both bottled at 45.8%, both sherried. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. They're both sweet Taliskers, or wine-finished Taliskers, I should say, not sherried. We have the Port Ruighe, I believe it's pronounced the Port Ruighe. This whiskey is finished in port casks. And we have the Distillers Edition Talisker, which is double matured in Amoroso, American oak casks. So, two sweet Taliskers to review today, both non-age stated, but I believe the Distillers Edition is around 10 years of age. Could maybe review this with the Talisker 10 year. If you're interested in that, please do let me know in the comments down below and I'll do that review for you guys. But today, we're going to be shooting it with the Port Ruighe. This is a whiskey, part of the core lineup. This one isn't, obviously. But the Port Ruighe is a whiskey that I've been looking at for a long time. So in the UK, this whiskey is £55 and it never seems to go on sale. And I've been watching it for years with an eagle eye, but it doesn't. I recently went to Germany and I picked this whiskey up for €35, which is about £30. I couldn't believe it. It's almost half price. So I snapped that up straight away. I wasn't planning on making a purchase, but I couldn't say no to that sort of deal, to be honest with you. Okay, I'll get them poured out and we'll get straight on with the review. Okay, let's try the Talisker Port Ruighe, the port finished Talisker first. So as you might expect, you're getting a decent amount of peat. It's not going to be too strong. It's not going to be, remember as well, this is an island whiskey, so it's a different type of peat to an Islay. It's not going to give you that forest, earthy quality as much, and it's not going to be quite as strong or as intense. Definitely comes across a little bit more sweet. So it's like a sweet peat, to a decent level. It's nothing too strong, but it's also not light. So I'd say a mid-level sweet peat. But there's two notes that I really want to mention here. I really want to stress, I should say. Cherries and tobacco leaf. Really strong whiskey on the tobacco quality. Now, I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke, never will. But I love tobacco in fragrances and I love it in whiskey. This one has that. I think it's such a nice note to nose. But it's filled with not just the sweet peat, but that cherry note. It's really quite strong. I would say a little bit of salt, which is nice. It balances that whiskey out. And just a touch of cracked black pepper. But it's not going to be as much salt and pepper as what you're expecting from an ordinary Talisker. Okay, onto the Distillers Edition, which is the double maturation of the Amoroso casks. Not as sweet on the nose. More lively. I'm getting a lot more wood spice. It's still sweet. And actually, I've had this whiskey on its own a few times, and it's a very sweet whiskey. It's just that sometimes when you do side-by-sides, you're talking more about the differences between the two. This is less sweet, but it's still sweet, if you know what I mean. The salt and pepper, the wood spice, they're all greater in the Distillers Edition than the Port Ruighe. So if that's what you like from a Talisker, which is definitely what most people like, the Distillers Edition might be the front runner so far. I'm still getting a tobacco influence. There's still tobacco presence there, but it's actually getting dominated a little bit by burnt wood, more like a bonfire on the nose, which the Port Ruighe didn't give me. And actually, that's not a note that I picked up on this drinking it on its own. It's only when I've had them side by side now, I'm picking it up. And I really enjoy that. Interesting. There's obviously the sweetness is coming from the peat, but it's also coming from I want to say a little bit of a honey. Yeah. A little bit of a honey. Obviously, you're getting cherries from the Port Ruighe. In the Talisker Distillers Edition, you're not getting cherries, but you are getting maybe like a raisin in there. Maybe a touch of a red fruit, but it's not as strong in that note as the Port Ruighe is. Just before we do though, if you like the video so far, please do leave a like on the video, and don't forget to click the subscribe button down below. That really helps the channel grow. So thank you. Yeah. Peaty, little bit of salt and pepper. You're definitely going to be reminded of Talisker when you have this whiskey. But it's certainly the sweetest Talisker that I've tried. And it's the softest as well. This whiskey drinks like water. What I would say as well is there's a little bit of cocoa powder on the taste of the Port Ruighe, which I've not had in a Talisker before. And it is quite interesting. A little bit of like a chocolate sweetness with a milk chocolate, I should say, cocoa powder with the peat and the salt. But it's nice. It's welcome. It's a welcome addition for sure. This whiskey is not going to be a thick, sweet, viscous whiskey. It drinks quite thin. It's quite watery. Don't take that as a negative though. In fact, a little bit dangerous. The second time I tried this whiskey, I just had a dram in the neck pour. If you haven't watched the neck pour, I do recommend you watch that, because this whiskey has changed since that video was released. And I only had the dram the first time. Went back a couple of days later, and by accident I drank almost half the bottle, and I didn't even know. It doesn't taste 46% at all. It doesn't taste 40%. It's really quite watery, and you can just drink so much of this whiskey because it's giving you a good balance, because it's not too sweet, because it has that salt, the pepper, the peat from the islands, the peated island scotch. So it's balanced, but there's no, there's no wood spice in this whiskey. Normally, I do get wood spice in a whiskey. I don't get it in the Port Ruighe, and so it drinks very, very easily. So warning label on that. Onto the Distillers Edition. Comes across thicker in the mouth, a little bit more wood, and a little bit more cracked pepper, and a little bit more salt. So this is definitely closer to traditional Talisker DNA, but it's a lot thicker in the mouth. There's a lovely sweetness to this whiskey. The Distillers Edition is definitely coming across a little bit more earthy, and that bonfire, that campfire note is really inviting, I have to be honest. Still sweet, but not as sweet. It just touches on a little bit of medicinal quality as well, which the Port Ruighe doesn't go near. So this is giving you far more. I would say actually the Distillers Edition is more complex. I'm definitely picking more out. Definitely that medicinal nature is coming through in this whiskey as you progress through it. Thicker, sweet peat, salt, pepper, medicinal quality. It's sweet, red fruits, raisins. I'm getting almost prunes in there as well. It's really quite there's a good amount of sweetness in there. It's quite sugary. A little bit of tobacco, but you can't really pick it up when you do them side by side because there's more tobacco in the Port Ruighe. The Port Ruighe on the other hand, and more wood spice as well in the Distillers Edition, but not too much. It's a soft whiskey. It's just that the Port Ruighe is softer, but I would say there's three notes that I want to emphasise with the Port Ruighe, and that is cherries, tobacco and cocoa powder. Less salt, less pepper, less wood spice, sweet peat. Again, this is a tough one to call. This is down to personal preference. I think the Distillers Edition is more complex. But if you want a more unique whiskey, the Port Ruighe is definitely the one to go. It drinks easier as well. I would say if you're not the biggest peat head, but you do like a sweet whiskey, I would actually recommend giving the Talisker Port Ruighe a go. You might enjoy it. Now, price for this whiskey, I did touch on the Port Ruighe earlier on. I got lucky in Germany and I paid £30 for this whiskey, but it is £55 in the UK. The Distillers Edition is also £55 in the UK, and I did forget to mention this is the 2022 Distillers Edition. I bought it recently, but it is the 2022 Distillers Edition. They do change it every year slightly, so that is something to bear in mind. But I do think that the notes should carry through between 21 and 23, I would imagine. But that double maturation's definitely given it a very different take on this Talisker. I would say if you adore Taliskers, you might prefer the Distillers Edition just because it gives you more of what it's certainly a closer take on what Talisker is. I think it's closer to that Talisker 10 than the Port Ruighe is. It's like a halfway house between the 10-year and the Port Ruighe, I think. But it's also soft and sweet. So I hope this video helps. Which do I prefer? I'll pause and get back to you. I need to think about this one. Honestly, for me, guys, just because I own a few bottles similar to the Talisker Distillers Edition, and just because I have a lot of bottles of whiskey, I'm going to go for the Port Ruighe today because I don't actually have a whiskey that reminds me of the Port Ruighe. So for that uniqueness, I'm going for it. Also, sweet peat, cherries, tobacco and cocoa powder. It's an easy drinker. I mean, this whiskey, this is my 4th time drinking this whiskey, so very scary. You do drink it very, very quickly. The winner today is going to be the Talisker Port Ruighe. But the Distillers Edition is still very good, but I think a lot of people will prefer the Talisker Distillers Edition because it's more similar to the Talisker 10-year, but with a lot more sweetness, and it's also a lot softer. I actually think it could be better. Actually, that review, guys, if you do want to see that review against the 10-year, do let me know in the comments down below and I'll film that review for you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helped. I hope you found it interesting at least. Even if you don't like peated whiskies, I hope you find it interesting. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I hope to see you all for the next Whiskey War.